I would like to thank Portugal Air Summit for this venue and also for the smart timing. In a period when we are tempted to draw back and let the virus take control of our industry. I think this was a really perfect timing, having an air summit. I think it's the only one in the year actually, and it was really a good move. A way to do not let things going on and in some way starting again the engine of aviation. We have gathered experts from the industry to deal with a very complicated subject, that is the aviation mandate, in a period where we see the problem of the economy. And we have people from France, from USA, from Netherlands, and Portugal to deal with this panel that demonstrate this really international aspect of it, but also experts from the avionics, from the air operations, from the ATN, ANSPs, to deal with this. And it's all about the future of aviation. If aviation has been a very successful industry, it is because it is really using innovation. So the perspective of mandates have different levels. It is from the global level, that is ICAO, dealing with this aspect of the whole world and getting these interoperability systems, but also from a very important region of the Earth, that is about the USA and the program, this transformational program that is NEXTGEN, but also from EASA standpoint and the SESAR program master plan. So, you know, mandate is really a complicated subject. It's about a long, complicated, decade-lasting process that we have to deal with. But the main objective of this is all about safety and interoperability. These are the main objectives. But this is achieved through standardization, through resilience, interoperability, capacity, and predictability. You know, predictability is very important in aviation, which is a way of saving a lot of time and a lot of money. And you need implication from many stakeholders, and you have to find a way to get incentive, to get buy-in, to get people going through it. And sometimes, unfortunately, you need sanctions, you need penalties, but at this time, the progress is really harmed by this COVID. But we have to demonstrate that in this industry, we are capable of being resilient. So, and the key transformation we are facing today in aviation is the way the airspace is managed. The airspace was used to be managed by separation in terms of distance. And we are moving from there, from distance-based separation to time-based separation to performance-based separation. And this can only be done through innovation, but also through the digitalization of the communication of aviation. And the name could not be chosen as well as flying digital. So, and also we will deal with the drone that is really the RPAS, like ICAO is naming it, dealing with drones. And it's a key transformation of the aviation and also a good way of having aviation being to the face of the world and getting development again, because there is a lot of innovation over there. So in the panel, in detail, I will introduce the gentlemen we have. We have Ete Okanama from EASA. Ete is remotely connected. I think that Ete is with us. Ete is the Chief Expert Avionics of EASA, And he is responsible for the development, the consistent application of regulation, the policies of avionics, electrical system flight controls, and Ete has been also with a strong background in aviation engineering and airlines. So he is also focusing on ATM and stay with his colleague inside and outside EASA. The second guest is from Gresso, that is John Noon. John actually is a native of Portugal, and I'm so proud having him back home to support us. And he has 40 years of experience in aviation. And actually, we have more than 100 years of experience here gathered between me and all the other person to deal with this complicated subject. And John actually background is so large, but he is never far from the cockpit. And having also joined the UAS team, he is an FAA representative. He is the chairman of Tampa Aviation Commission, working closely with NEXTGEN. And we have also another important gentleman with us here, that is Fabio Camacho, that is from ANAC. He has more than 12 years in operations and air traffic control. He has a major contribution in most of the international effort to bring aviation together, to build this rule making. He is very active, and I'm so proud of having him here with us. So I would like now to go into the detail of our presentation, and I would like to welcome Ete from Cologne. I hope Ete is connected. Hello, Ete, my friend.
Abdoulaye, good evening. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfectly. So the technology is working, and we are so proud having the third person of this panel. So Ete will detail the ATM, the CNS, and SESAR aspect of it. You know, if I try just to put some numbers, because I don't want to bother everybody with the naming of the implementing regulation, that is his daily work, and you can imagine that this is very complicated. And just to name few regulatory documentation, of course, it started with the 1207/2011. Do you remind that this 2011 was launched in 2011? And in November 2011, was laying down the requirement for the performance and the interoperability of surveillance for the single European sky. And this regulation now is coming to life. And we also have another one that have created an amendment for this, that is the 1028 of 2014, that have amended this initial one. But I think he will start with talking about the CS-ACNS that he's very aware of. I would like to welcome you, Ete, and nice to see your face from some time ago now, when I was with Eurocae, working hard with you. So welcome, Ete. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Because before you really start, how the operations are going with EASA in this context? First, just to start.
Actually, we're doing quite well, I believe. We still work from the office about 50% of the time. We work from home. Technology is allowing us to meet virtually. Just earlier today, I was joining the ICAO ARPAS panel. And it all seems to be working well. So operations-wise, I think we managed to continue. Obviously, traveling is difficult. Witnessing testing is difficult. And I guess our flight test colleagues have a more difficult time than our avionics experts in a way. But yeah, overall, I guess we managed quite well.
Excellent. And can we deep dive into the CS-ACNS, if you please?
Sure, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when it came to these airspace regulations, and we didn't think of this immediately in 2011, but sometime later we thought that really we should have one document that caters for all the airspace requirements, not just the ones in Europe, but also the ones in other places of the world, relative to the airborne side, so relative to the aircraft. So what we did was we created a document called CS-ACNS, which contains all the aircraft level requirements for compliance to airspace regulations, both in Europe, the US, and other places of the world. We've recently included a new section on performance-based navigation. I'm actually quite proud of that one. And the reason why I'm proud is because we have managed to move away from the ICAO type language that wasn't very readable for a lot of people. If you're not involved in any of those working groups or panels, it's difficult to comprehend. And we've moved toward a new system where we really target another audience, and our target audience, at least for me in this case, was the smaller organizations, the guys who do maintenance, or primarily do maintenance, who do an occasional modification, the design organizations. And so we moved back from essentially taking Airbus and Boeing as the reference to these smaller organizations, and I do hope that worked very well. One of the things that we did there is that we kind of maximized credit for equipment approval. We saw in the older material that there's a lot of duplications. You had to essentially redo work that was already done by the equipment manufacturer, and we've tried to take all of that out of the CS. Now, some of the older parts on surveillance, we're not there yet, but we do plan to update that in the same fashion, and we'll try to continue in this way with any addition that we will add in the near future.
Excellent. So, and what about the data link services? Actually, where we are at with that, with the small also companies that have different aircraft, and with the pandemic and the lack of money also from the airlines.
Yes, that's a good question to ask. We have a rulemaking task to work on data link. Essentially what we were trying to do is to make sure that we have a more end-to-end type of approach to data link that we used to have previously. Unfortunately, with regard to data link, the rulemaking group really didn't prove to be able to come to a consolidated opinion on where to go with data link, and that makes it a bit difficult. Nevertheless, we will update the CS-ACNS to make sure that, at least on the aircraft side, we have everything in place. So FANS-A, compliance with the latest standards. We're really making it a state-of-the-art document. Now, where we go with data link in Europe from where we are today is really a difficult question to answer. That's perhaps more a crystal ball type of question. I do wish to state, though, that in my opinion, data link is supporting a larger goal of having a more efficient way in which we manage the airspace. And in that sense, I do think that we need to perhaps take a step back and really think, where do we need data link? Where does it really add efficiency? For what purpose do we need it? And base our future, or the future of data link, back on that. One more thing to add to that maybe is a concern that at least I have been expressing for quite a while, that as we move forward with data link into 4D trajectory, into some of the AF1 and AF6 services that SESAR has been developing, that we really should be looking at security as well. Currently we have a non-secured data link, and I still do feel that that's a risk moving forward. We need to do something about it if we go to 4D trajectory and those type of applications.
Oh, excellent. Security, and actually I see that there was a group on EuroCAE in the security side. The US have managed, by the way, to implement the departure clearance. Is a sort of a first implementation of this regulation. Do we have that actually in? What do we plan at this point?
I believe that it's one of the goals of the new rulemaking task is to add some of these services. Mm-hmm. Where those services, security for me has a relation with the time that the flight crew has to assess the information that is given to them. Mm-hmm. So where that time is available, where the information is non-critical, where they have the means to assess the information before they take off, for example, with the departure clearance, security is perhaps less of an issue. Where it becomes a bigger issue is really in the tactical, decision making. You have maybe 10 seconds to make a decision on something that has been transmitted over data link, information that you need to enter in the flight management system. That's, I think, where we need to perhaps rethink what we're doing today and make sure that we address security before we go much further in that direction. But indeed, some of the clearances that the US is looking at, we're also looking at, and we certainly we'll try to harmonize that as good as we can.
Excellent. In general, PBN, performance-based navigation, where is the progress in Europe actually? It's critical for example, this airfield where we are, and I think they are thinking about doing some LPVs or other kind of way of taking advantage of this global positioning system, the live Galileo now in Europe, this, that we should be very proud of. Where we are at with that very quickly.
We have the PBN-IR, which is encouraging, aerodromes or operators of aerodromes to implement procedures that are PBN procedures, so RNP approaches to LPV minima. I'm quite happy looking at the progress of the implementation of LPV in Europe. Where I think we could do a little bit better is in the RNP-AR approaches. So these are the more complex approaches with turns, more critical. It does require more in terms of crew qualification, aircraft qualification, procedure design. But the US, I think the US has shown that it is possible, and I'm hoping that Europe will follow and implement these type of procedures more. On the LPV side, I think that's going quite well. We're utilizing ECNOS to the extent that we can, and I do hope that this will continue in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ete. Please stay with us. And we are crossing the other side of the ocean. And when you sit here in Portugal, that is sort of like the door of Europe, and crossing and going to the USA, like someone did years ago, and meeting another friend of us. tell us about, John, tell us about NEXTGEN and where we are at with this very interesting program, really, that is unifying actually the FAA in a transformational program that will really go really digital and improving in a tremendous way the efficiency and the predictability of the national airspace. John, please, can you just tell us about the NEXTGEN progress?
So the NEXTGEN is halfway into the implementation. It's pre-pandemic, of course, is we were handling 2.7 million passengers per day with 44,000 flights at the peak. That's obviously changed. Since the pandemic, I've been on flights at least every other week, and I've noticed the drop in it. But I will tell you that from the FAA perspective, they, instead of putting Band-Aids on former issues, whether it was old technology, it was decided to go into brand new technology, all of it digital, and it's just increased the efficiency to the point that to date, it's saved over $7 billion in terms of maintenance, on-time arrivals, the lack of flight delays, and it's just very, very noticeable. If you would, on the next slide.
Yes, and to mention actually just the ruling as we talk about mandates, the federal regulation actually that has replaced the advisory circular 9114A of October 2014 that about automatic dependent surveillance broadcast that was canceled and replaced by the active federal regulation 14 CFR 91, 225, and 227. That was about ADSB out by January 1st, 2020. That regulation is in force, and I understand have already provided a lot of added value.
It has. So one of the rules that's been enforced on the FAA is they have to take into account the impact on the end user. So in order for ADSB to be successful, the FAA offered an incentive so that when you retrofitted your equipment, whether it's private or a commercial aircraft, you received a rebate. So it made it much more palatable for companies and for the private and commercial entities to be in compliance. So in order to operate in class Delta, Bravo, or Charlie, you now have to be ADSB equipped, and it seems to be working very, very well.
Yes, and the DCL, as I mentioned, is already operational. I think there is something like 70% or something like that. I don't have the exact number, but it is already providing a lot of value. Instead of calling the tower to get the departure, this is already received by SMS, actually. And this is really an example of the digitalization of the airspace. So I think that we can see here the progress. You tell me, maybe we can. This is giving a lot of result, definitely. And as far as FAA is concerned, let's go very quickly maybe to the swim aspects. And Actually, the SWIM is nothing but the internet of the aviation, a way to go into this automation at arrival level, but also at en route level. The automation at arrival level, you can see it in terms of Metroplex, how it provides value, but also in terms of en route. I don't know where we are at en route, but at least you can talk about this, the Metroplex in Phoenix.
Yeah, so it becomes, and I have the benefit of being on both sides of the aisle. So I serve as an FAA Fast Team Safety Representative, and I also used to be the chairman of an aviation commission in the city of Tempe. So the positions were directly opposed. In one particular case, we were listening to the citizen noise complaints of the aircraft flying continuously over their homes. On the other side, we're looking at the safe operation of aircraft. So when you have an example like the Phoenix Metroplex, where you have all these flights merging in, and you'll see it on the next slide, with all these airports, Phoenix Sky Harbor, Mesa Gateway, Scottsdale Airport, Deer Valley, Falcon Field, all the way down, including Tucson. Tucson is shared with Motham Air Force Base. North, you have Luke Air Force Base. And in order to make all that traffic flow safely, they've come up with a Metroplex. Now, it hasn't been implemented. There are concerns with the public, the noise levels, and that's going through hearings, environmental impacts, but that too will succeed. It just, I can't imagine not to. It's just very efficient, and it becomes very safe with all the aircraft being digitally connected, and you're taking the human element out of certain aspects of the cumbersome communications.
Excellent. So this is really demonstrating again this critical transformation that is this digitalization of the communications in aviation. And SWIM is nothing but the internet of how we exchange information in a secure way, and how we streamline all these exchanges like digital NOTAMs and so. I propose we cross again the Atlantic Ocean to come and visit Portugal again, and talk with Fabio about SESAR and EU space. And I think that this is critical transformation again, very related to a very soaring business related to the drone activity. And SESAR joint undertaking has in 2017 launched this EU space blueprint. And it was also supported by this EASA Advance Notice for Proposal Amendment of 2017 05 A and B, sorry for the jargon, but that was introducing of the regulatory framework for the operations of drone of the 4 and 12 May 2017. And this is critical to the transformation of the single European sky, how we can fit, how we can insert the drone into the picture. And this is critical. I see that there are some companies developing here in Ponte de Sol, like Takeover, and I think it is critical we talk about this subject. Fabio, tell us about this European ATM Master Plan and where we are at very briefly. We have very few minutes left, but okay. I think that you have the critical objective.
Yes, so basically just catching a little bit what John said and Ethel also. So Federal Aviation Authority have NEXTGEN, Europe have SESAR and the ATM Master Plan. And of course there is an alignment. When we have mandates, we shall implement that regulations, and we will use the essential operational changes to implement it. So locally, each state will implement some provisions of the ATM Master Plan. So we need to focus in the transformation that we have ahead. So basically, as regards to the transformation, the first step, of course, is to understand what are the difficulties that we have right now. There are some studies regarding with the changes in the airspace that needs to be done. There is a plan from 2019. We have the master plan from 2020, and with that, we aligned the objectives of the phases of SESAR, phase A, B, C, and D, and the blueprint that was delivered in 2017. So the foundation services from the EU space, then the initial services, the advanced services, and at last the full integration. So talking specifically and taking in consideration the mandates, that basically means that we need to change the things. And things to be changed, of course, we need to standards. And the biggest problem is standards. We need to take in mind that we will move from an architecture that is based in layers. So we have the ground operations layer, we have the service provided layer, and the airspace layer, so cockpit. And then in 2014, so in the final phase of SESAR and of the ATM Master Plan, so EU space phase 4, we will have a full integration, and that integration will include services in EU space, will include high degree of connectivity, automation, and of course a change on the way that we provide the service. And what are the changes? First will be the concept of a totally integrated network operation, supported of course by the network manager. We have actually provisions in the local single sky implementation plan that is done in each country, specifically to start to work in the transition phase to achieve that goal. And also we need an important thing of this digital transformation is the decoupling of these services. When you are in the layer of the service provider, normally a service provider will gather all the services and will provide, so you will have a CNS infrastructure, no communication between the CNS, by the way. You do not have a way to exchange data, and of course, the digital transformation will need to ensure the implementation of SWIM, as John talked a little bit. And of course, we should start with the yellow phase that will be the protocols. So, transiting from a layer structure of the airspace to a structure that is like the scalability, it's ensured. Okay, to do that transition, we need to change a little bit our regulation. Then, of course, it includes the changes of the EOPS. So in Europe, we have a regulation, a high-level regulation, regarding with the interoperability, 552 from 2004. And what is expected is that regulations that are linked to standards, for example, for the CPDLC, for the Mode S, and so on, we should change it by implementing delegated acts. And with that, we will have the new standards to do the digital transformation.
Excellent. So really, as you can see, it's all about digitalization of the aviation in a way to create efficiency. And of course, the situation is complicated from economical standpoint. The airlines are burning a lot of cash because, of course, the aircraft are being grounded. Of course, the mandate is about also investment in order to have return, but at this point in time, it's somewhat difficult for the industry to, especially for the small companies, to go through this transformation with very few aircraft. So I have seen that the regulator have been very smart in somewhat delaying the introduction of this. But it's, again, all about innovation. And really, to name it, it's about digitalization, like this summit. And I would like to, again, congratulate the mayor, the municipality of Ponte de Sor, being spirited enough to move forward and to get a success. And I think this will give light to this summit, and next year it will be far bigger. Thank you so much again, and happy to see you certainly next year. Thank you, John. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Ete.